Welcome to my video on Willsmere weekend stay. We had a weekend there which was pretty interesting. It's a former asylum, Kew Asylum, which it once was from 1871 onwards and closed in 1988. It was once a asylum, hospital for the insane, and later a psychiatric hospital. I stayed in one of the apartments, which was an interesting experience because when I went into the apartment, because you had to go to the gate, get the keys, which was on a lock thing to get through the gates. It's all like mechanical. And when I entered the apartment, I could smell this intense, disgusting hospital smell. It was so overpowering, but no one else could smell this but me. So I started opening the windows up and the door, and it just was horrendous. And after about 2 minutes, it subsided. It was gone. It was so intense. And I thought that was really odd and strange. And then I just sort of thought, oh, that was really odd, but I know what I smell. And I sort of thought, oh, I don't know, you sort of brush it off a bit, but then it was just playing on my mind. And then I met this lady, Jane, who's a resident there. And I was just walking around. I saw this beautiful black Labrador, which caught my eye. And then I got chatting to this lady, Jane. And I told her about the smell. And I said I could smell this like intense, disgusting hospital smell. And she goes, well, this was once a hospital. And I said to her, well, I said, yeah, I know it was a psychiatric hospital. I said, but this is what I smell. And then straight out, she said, well, my apartment's haunted. She goes, I have a male spirit in my apartment. And I just went, oh, wow. So that blew me away straight there. And then she went on to say she had a guest one night, and just as he was about to grab his wine glass, it lifted up in the air slightly and smashed on its own. And she said they were all sitting at the table in disbelief. They all looked at each other, and he just got up out of the chair and he left immediately. Um, I believe her 100% because there's many paranormal stories about Willsmere. Even on Google, they talk about it. So this blew me away. And then she goes, oh, would you like to see my apartment? And I said, yeah, absolutely. So she took me up to her apartment. And in the apartment, you could see like the poles still like in the lounge room area. The poles would have been like in the middle of the room, but all the beds in the dormitory originally would have been lined up there. And it was just incredible. Then she showed me on her windows where the little scratches were. So patients had like gotten some sort of tool or their fingernails or something and scratched there. And then I asked her where the library was because I forgot. The library is like now the day room, sort of. Well, it was a day room, but it's a library with books and everything. And then adjoined to it is the museum, which is the former women's ward. And I said to Penny, I said, because this lady was in there, then she left from the library, and I said to Penny, go in there, take as many photos as you want. So Penny got in there and took a lot of photos. And then, like, we were just blown away. So we did a lot of things around the estate. It's a beautiful estate, but it's very historical. The buildings are Italianate architecture. It's still got the original ha-ha walls out the front. It's just a beautiful estate, but there definitely is something there. So when I went to bed the Friday and the Saturday night, I could hear like a thud on the ceiling. It was like, Jurassic Park when you hear that foot stomp, but it was a big thud. And then I could hear was like the footsteps, like boots, like clonk, clonk, clonk. But it was like a man wearing boots or something. I thought that was really strange. And then I could also smell the fresh whiff of a woman's perfume. There was no perfume in this apartment. It was so fresh, it went towards my nose and it was so clear, the smell, and then it was gone. And that blew me away. I couldn't explain it. That was just mind blowing. I went to the bathroom, and as I was using the taps and because it takes a lot for the water to warm up, and I'm taking a shower, and I just had an overwhelming feeling. It just felt like I wasn't alone in there. And that's really hard to explain, but I just felt that way. And then also, there was another incident too. Penny's standing there talking, and she mentioned ghosts, and I just said quietly, Penny, shut up. They might hear us, because, as you know, I am a huge believer in the paranormal. And as she's talking away, she's got her bedroom light on. She was staying in, and the lights started flickering. It was just really, really creepy. And we all looked at each other and we just went, "What on earth?" Like, she goes, "Oh, that's a bit fucking creepy and weird." So that threw us off a bit. And then when I'm sitting using the computer, because it's still like summer weather, and I could feel like coldness around the bottom of my legs, which I'm like, it wouldn't be freezing because it's like, it wouldn't be freezing because it's summertime. My legs like felt chilly, like there was a chill around them. I felt that weird. And then I looked at my arms, and all the hairs on my arms are like standing up on end. I thought that was a little bit strange. And yeah, as I said, I definitely did hear the footsteps on the roof, which were like heavy boots. And it wasn't like a fast walking, it was like a really like a slow walking. And then I could hear that thud, which was it was loud. It was loud enough to wake the dead, I tell you. And it was about late 3 to 4 in the morning around when I'd heard those sounds. So yeah, many residents in Willsmere have had paranormal experiences. So it's well known that these have taken place in the estate, and I believe every person in that estate that's had an experience. I also did take a photograph of a cat, which is on my Instagram. And the funny thing is, where the cat was sitting on the window was pulled up. So it was being held by something like a piece of wood. And inside the window, it's dark in the background. So all you could see was like darkness. When I went to review the photo, there's like this really bright sort of like a white sort of a like light thing, and then like these two like glowing piercing looking things in it, and it's a bit creepy and weird, and it makes me think, well, what the hell is that? Is it a glitch or something, or is it something else? It just looks really strange, because when I took the photograph, I did not see anything like that with my naked eye. I did not see anything, yet the camera picked up this strange image. So it is quite creepy. As I said, this was my first weekend ever staying at Willsmere. It was all three. It was all three of us staying there, and I've done tours of Willsmere Kew Asylum a few times, and they're really good tours. They usually fall around the winter months. It's a fascinating place, so I do highly recommend. Originally, I was going to do a live video, which I hope I can do someday, which would be me doing a proper tour of the whole estate with me talking, doing the narrating and everything. So that will be, during the future. But yeah, do yourselves a favor, go on these like historic tours. They are interesting. So the one in at Willsmere is usually through open house, and they usually do it around July. They also do like a free tour for the rehearsals. So last year I did the free tour, and then I came back later in the month and I did the open house. But if it ever does pop around again, I'll totally just take the free tour. It's well worth it. Um, with the history of the mental asylums in Victoria, it was Kew, Beechworth, and Ararat were the main three asylums in the 19th century, and they ran for quite a long time. It wasn't until the deinstitutionalization took place, and then they all closed in the 90s. Willsmere closed a lot earlier, 1988, and then it was developed into apartments later on, so 1993 onwards. And the Premier Jeff Kennett opened Willsmere. It is a beautiful estate. There's gardens, there's dogs. I met this really cute dog. Oh my God, Kite. Kite the deerhound, which is a really cute dog, beautiful animal. And then I saw a lot of other dogs. Went swimming in the pool. They've got like a gigantic pool, so during summer it's beautiful. And then I remember just seeing the leaves falling. It was the start of autumn. The following day was the start of autumn. Just see all these beautiful leaves falling, and it was just relaxing, despite the weird occurrences and experience I had there. It was a beautiful stay. Joe's apartment's really beautiful. The couch is comfy, the bed's comfy. It's got that homely feeling. I definitely didn't feel any threatening vibes at Willsmere. It's very peaceful. And when you wake up in the morning, you can hear the birds chirping. There's a lot of wildlife. You also see a photograph in here, which is of Yarra Bend Asylum, which was 1848. It was built, and there's only a remaining gate pillar. So that photo is actually here. But I highly recommend you go do some of these tours and check out these places. It's pretty amazing. I will say about Willsmere, the residents there are very friendly. Like when you walk around the estate, they do say hello to you, and some people do chat. I got to share my knowledge, my history about the asylum with Jane. She was blown away. I knew a lot about Kew Cottages, which is a few seconds down the road. There's only 3 cottages remaining. She was blown away, so I recommended her several books so she can go and read these really good books. There is some really good books I can recommend. The Maddest Place on Earth by Jill Geis. That's about Yarra Bend Asylum, but mostly about Kew Asylum. It's about a vagabond named Julian Thomas. He went undercover at Kew Asylum, so he experienced what it was like for the patients and the daily life of the attendants. And it's a real interesting, in depth book about it. And also, there's another book called Kew Cottages, The World of Dolly Stainer. And it's about a lady with a disability, Dolly Stainer. She lived in Kew Cottages for like most of her life. And later, when she was in her elderly years, she left the institution and went into like a normal house with all a few other ladies from the cottages. And it actually took them a long time to adjust to normal life because they were so used to routine. And, they weren't used to that sort of relaxing sort of life and making their own decisions. So it was a new life for them altogether after they got out of there. So that's an interesting book. If you want to see photographs, there's some amazing photographs on the, Victoria Library and Victoria Collections website. They have some amazing photos of Kew Asylum, Willsmere, what it looked like before the renovations and what the wards looked like and everything. So that is pretty interesting too. But yes, I don't know how long I could go on talking because I'm not used to doing videos. Um, so hopefully my future one will be me actually showing everyone around. Originally, I was going to do a proper tour and people were going to come. No one showed up, which I was disappointed, to be honest, that no one showed up. It was a free tour of Willsmere. I was staying there. I had the keys. I had everything to show everyone around. So I was disheartened and disappointed. But I'm actually going to do my own personal video in the future. So keep an eye out for that because that'll be an interesting one. Um, Also, too, there was some patients that were there. There was a famous patient who was transgender called Edward DeLacy Evans. He was put in the Bendigo Hospital and then at a point sent to Kew Asylum where he was brutally stripped naked. And then they discovered that Edward's real stripped Edward and then found out Edward was really a lady. But Edward DeLacy Evans was one of the first trans men. And you can imagine how heartbreaking going through something like that would have been. It's just shocking how people were treated in those days. And if you had a mild depression, or if you were trans, or if you were homosexual or something, they would put people in these institutions. And it was just a horrible way. I get quite emotional when I hear these stories. They really touch my heart in a way, because it makes you think how life was and how far mental health and everything's come now, and where we're at now and how different things are. So yeah, I hope you have enjoyed my audio narration. Uh, I'll probably do more because once I learn more information, I can do more on this subject. Yeah, thank you for listening, and hope you enjoy the photographs on my video.